Hello, welcome to this week's edition of the Beaver Banter podcast. I'm Nick Daschel, and I cover Oregon State football for the Oregonian OregonLive. After winning 4 out of their first 5 games, we'll be discussing the low point of the season, which was last night's 42-37 loss to Nevada. I was there along with our Joe Freeman, and it was something, all right. Joining me, as always, is former Oregon State defensive end Isaac Hodgins. As someone who played defense his entire life, that must have been painful to watch.
Yeah, it wasn't the easiest to watch, especially since it was on CBS Network, and so there's probably a little more viewers than usual. I guess you could just call it the Nevada curse, because I think they were saying on TV the last time Nevada beat a Pac-12 team was when we played them back in 2018 at
Yeah.
Nevada. So seems like we got a little curse going on there, unfortunately.
Yeah, and both games came down to the final play.
Yeah,
Missed a field goal in the 18, and this one was
I guess
it
you
came
could
down
say
to the
it
final play
came down
last.
to the final play, but let's be real. I mean, it was a rough game all the way around.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But I was before the game. I was down on the field, and I started finding out about certain guys weren't going to be playing, and I started adding up the numbers on defense. I went, wow, this is going to be a track meet, and
Yeah,
I'm not sure Oregon State's equipped to play in a track meet, and they tried, but
yeah. And I
just
saw there was quite a few defensive linemen out, and then I started looking it up online, and um, you know, we had two defensive tackles out, and then as the game went on, I saw Alfieri was playing defensive end, and then
yeah.
Jaden Robinson was still out, so I was like, oh, this is not good.
Well, in total, since camp, with the team they had in camp, there's 7 defensive linemen that did not play last night,
Wow.
and 5 of them are out for the season, and one of them's not even on the team anymore. But I mean, and those were probably the guys that you would some of those guys you would think were probably going to start or play some significant minutes. Um,
Yeah.
so it was. I mean, poor Jacob Schuster and Smisi last night. They played. I mean, they played 47 snaps, which isn't a high number, but they played 47 out of the 55 snaps. They were on the field, virtually the entire game,
Yeah.
um,
I had a
which
few
is
games like that myself back in 2018. I think when we played UCLA, I had like 70 snaps or something insane like that.
yeah.
So I feel their pain, but
Yeah, I don't imagine it's tough in the first half, but you get the fourth quarter, I
yeah, it's even
imagine,
tougher when you lose and you can't stop the run. So,
right. And you're playing at altitude, and just everything starts adding up. And
yeah,
um, well, I thought I'd start with this topic. Personnel, as I mentioned, the seven guys being out, they're down to it's so desperate that they're playing Andy Alfieri on the defensive side. I think he
yeah,
played 22 out of the 55. So he played about 40% of the snaps last night, which, that, I mean, it's a little desperate. But what I'm wondering is, obviously you guys as players and the coaching staff have to have that next man up mentality. And scheme matters to a point, but you've got to have the Jimmies and the Joes, or the X's and O's don't work, do they? Or I mean,
yeah. And I mean,
what is the line? I guess what is the line for a team and a coach when you've got so many injuries that it's just an impossible task? Yet you really can't give in.
yeah, I think you have to. Obviously, you gotta address that this week. Obviously Alfieri stepped up to the plate and was playing defensive end, but obviously it was pretty glaring. He hadn't been coached up too well on the scheme or what his role may have been, or obviously some of it is experience too, is if you get caught inside on some things. There was just some problems all around as a defense that it just seemed like very undisciplined football. It gave me a lot of, I hate to say it, but it gave me a lot of flashbacks back to 2018 where we're stunting and then there's four defensive linemen on the left side of the ball when there's supposed to be an even balance, like there's
Yeah.
two people in one hole and someone is rushing the quarterback, they just take inside leverage and they lose contain on the quarterback and um, it was just not good. And then obviously it's being a consistent problem is no one's keeping leverage. No one's keeping. There's no outside contain. Um, and obviously we got a few touchdowns scored on us because there was no contain. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's something you got to address as a staff. And if you are going to play tight ends, they can play defensive ends. I mean, JJ Watt was a tight end. You just got to be coached up on it. And I think it's unfair to anyone to just kind of get thrown in there like, all right, good luck. Um,
Yeah.
so
I mean, I assume he practiced, during the week. They
yeah,
knew
I,
it
I,
was going to be an
one
issue,
week
but
of practice is kind of tough to learn,
yeah,
a new way of thinking. And, even going from defensive line to fullback, like it's a whole new language. It's a whole new set of thinking and ways of doing things. You gotta have to relearn and redo. So it's not an easy task. And it's definitely not something where you could just do a week of practice and be like, all right, go set the edge. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, how does a coach, talk to the team about an issue like this where, you can't use injuries as excuses yet? I mean, if we're being real, that's the issue. I mean, it's not the entire issue, but it's a big part of the issue is that if they had, let's say Nick Norris and Hickle and some of these other guys in there, I feel like that this stuff wouldn't be happening to the degree it is right now. But
Yeah.
how do you sell the team on that? That hey, you guys might not be ready, but
Yeah, I think you just continue to double down on your culture of the next man up mentality, like you already said. And you also have to like, hey guys, take care of yourselves. We're mid-season healthy. Get in the training room, work those trainers, make sure that they're, that's what we're paying them to do. So you got to be as a player living in that training room and taking care of your body. And then you got to be doing your best, obviously, if you are in that two deep or three deep, even at this point, you got to be ready to go. And you can't hamstring the team because you don't know your plays, you don't know what you're doing, and you're not ready to execute on something that needs to be done. So I think it's just doubling down on your culture as a coach.
You didn't play, obviously didn't play for Trent Bray as a head coach, but you did for Jonathan. What was kind of the thought process when the season started in terms of contact in practice? How much contact did you guys do in practice? Did it ease off quite a bit as the season wore on, or did you guys
Oh yeah.
keep it up for quite a while?
Yeah, I could only imagine that Coach Bray's having everything go down a lot just because you can't afford to be hitting, every single day, and not be able to like, hey, let's give these guys a break. And so I already know, especially this deep into the season, it doesn't seem like it's that deep, but we talked about it before. When you have fall camp, where you have more practices in fall camp than you do throughout the whole season, like
Yeah,
that beats up your body. So guys are already beat up by game one. And so you definitely have to bring down the contact, bring down the load off of players, shorten practices a bit, but you got to do it in a way where you're still getting work done because obviously there's still a lot of work that needs to be done.
yeah. Physically, what are you seeing up front? Are guys physically hanging in there, or are some guys getting overwhelmed there too?
Up front, I'm seeing that guys are handling it physically well. I just think mentally it's just not there. Whether it's experience or it's just not knowing your plays or knowing the proper technique to get to where you need to go. I mean, I can't mention how many plays I saw defensively where two guys were in the same hole And I know for a fact 2 guys are never supposed to be in the same in the same place, right? Like if someone's right here and you're back behind them, there's 2 helmets that are, of the same color in the same place. It's not a good place to be as a defender.
Yeah.
And so I just saw that one too many times. And one of them was a huge touchdown where the Nevada quarterback broke out for like a 40 yard touchdown scramble
Yeah.
right up the gut. So yeah,
Well,
it's just
then we got the back end. Jaden Robinson, Kobe Singleton, Noble Thomas are all out. Andre Jordan went down late yesterday. I mean, the back end doesn't specifically target the run, but they've got some run responsibilities. And afterwards, Skylar Thomas talked to us after the game, and he took it pretty personally. That he blamed it on himself, and he missed a lot of tackles. But I don't know. What are you seeing from the back end?
I mean, I'm seeing the back end is having to overcompensate a bit in the run game just because um, it just seems like once the running back gets through that first layer of defense, like he's gone. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like the defensive backs are almost feeling like they got a trigger and they almost are playing linebacker. Like that's not their job. Um, and so if we just have people getting through the first layer of our defense and then there's no one there to stop them,
Yeah,
that's not Skylar Thomas's job to be the leading tackler on the team. I'll tell you this much. Do you know who was the leading tackler on our team in 2018? Do you remember? It wasn't me. It was Jalen Moore. He was our safety.
yeah,
And it's like whenever your safety is the leading tackler on your team, that's a bad place to be.
yeah,
Obviously, I know those guys get a lot of tackles, but they shouldn't be the leading tackler. That just means so much is getting through the defense, the front seven, that he's having to make all the tackles. Like, that's not good.
yeah. I mean, this defense is built for the inside linebackers to be the leading tacklers almost every game. I mean, that's why Oregon State,
Yeah,
built up giant. Those whoever played inside linebacker under Smith always had,
yep,
led the team and pretty much led the Pac-12 in tackles. So,
yeah.
um,
And
yeah,
that's just not happening right now because I think it's a lack of experience, really. I don't think it's a lack of talent, and I don't know if it's just a lack of experience or if it's also a lack of like people are just not knowing where they need to be and aren't where they need to be. In this defense, it's pretty simple. Like you got this gap, you have to cross the guard's face. You get across the guard's face, and if you don't, like it's a 90-yard touchdown. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And so that's the problem with defenses where there's a lot of moving parts. It's like it's great when it works, but if you're not in the right place at the right time and they get through that first layer, it's bad news. We saw that a lot.
So technically, do you think the scheme is good enough, and the guys just aren't doing
Yeah,
what they're supposed to be doing?
I know for sure that the scheme they do, it works because I've been in a defense where we do that scheme. It's just it doesn't work if 2 people are in the same gap. Like if I
Yeah,
have the A gap, I can't be in the A gap and the middle linebackers in the A gap. That means the B gap's open. So they're just that's exactly what's happening.
yeah,
Is people there's too many hats in one gap.
yeah. Um, you've been on defenses too, where obviously the mantra for when you're playing defense is do your job, don't do somebody else's job, or
Yep.
unless you have to. But are you? Yeah, but I'm sure you've been on at least probably 2018 and probably 2019. You're probably on defenses where guys not only try to do their job, but other guys' jobs too. Are you seeing any of that going on?
Yeah, I mean, like I kind of mentioned, statistically it looks like the safeties are kind of having to, they're kind of having to do everyone else's job because they're the leading tacklers. And then, you know, you start to see a lot of people start to become heroes, right? Like if you're an outside linebacker, you start taking inside moves because, you got to get pressure on the quarterback, and
Yeah,
that's the least what we used to say, like that's the easiest route to take. And so you take an inside move, and now the quarterback, you've lost contain, and he goes for, he scrambles and throws a 50-yard pass or whatever it may be. You just got to be able. I mean, their goal was you got to corral this quarterback with good rush lanes, and you got to corral him, and we didn't corral him very well.
Right. I don't know if the pass defense is any good or not, because why would you pass
they
them?
do whatever
Why
they
would you,
want. They just ran the
why would you
ball.
pass on Oregon State right now? I mean, shoot, you get 8-9 yards a carry.
It's like keep running it.
I mean, I think their pass defense is pretty good, but I don't know, and we're not going to find out. We'll get to UNLV coming up, but we're not going to find out from them either, because all they do is run the ball. So,
Right.
Offensively, it seemed like a mixed bag. Oregon State ran 85 plays in the game. 85 to 55. Whew. They got a season high 562 yards. McCoy threw for a season high 348 yards. Hankerson, had season career highs for 28 carries, 3 touchdowns, and he almost had, career high for rushing yards. He had 154. Jeremiah Noga had his busiest game of the season. He had 9 targets, 6 catches. Trent Walker, 7 for 96, all in the second half. And your guy, Jermaine Terry, with five catches for like 94 yards, season high, career highs, I think. I mean, let's just start with that one there.
That first drive, I was sitting there dumbfounded of just like, did we just unlock like Oregon State's next level of offense? Like, that was the most beautiful, perfect drive. I mean, you start out with the naked boot, and then you got some powerful rushes by Hank, and it was just a beautiful drive that they put together. And then I just don't know what happened. Obviously, that red zone interception was huge, but I mean, that first, like, that's what I'm talking about. Those naked boots where we're just dumping it off to the tight end. I mean, that's Oregon State football right there. That's pro style football right there. That everyone in the NFL does, and that's something that we've done, and we for some reason haven't done it till this point. But there's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing missing is testing the defense deep down the field, but
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe that's just not that. Maybe that's coming. I don't know. But I mean, 6 games into the season, outside of the 4 interceptions last night, I mean, you got to feel pretty good about the way the offense is moving the ball and all that.
No, I gained a huge amount of respect and confidence if I'm the coaching staff in Giovanni McCoy. Obviously, there were some things that didn't go your way, some fluke plays like that interception in the red zone. I think there was another interception that was a tip pass again. But there were some moments where he was standing in the pocket and he was delivering these accurate passes, and I was just like, wow, like if we combine that with the Giovanni McCoy we saw in the previous other games where he's using his legs, like we see a combination of that. And as he begins to get more veteran and comfortable in his role, like I think there's something to be really excited about here, honestly. I know it was a disappointing loss, but there's a lot of things that were super encouraging in that game, especially offensively.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be a little more challenging without Jam Griffin, and I mean we still don't really know what's going on there. Trent just refuses to say anything about that situation, so I'm just going to guess it's not good, and probably not. We're not going to see him anytime soon, but the freshman kid, Saladin Allah, he got his first significant action last night, and he was he had a couple of good runs, and I suspect he's just getting started. He's getting comfortable, and I feel like I'm not going to say he's Damian Martinez first year at Oregon State, where he just took over in the second half of the season, but I think he's got some potential to give him. Maybe not be Jam, but maybe be Jam light. I don't know. But Hankerson's got to stay in one piece, because 28 carries. He can't. I don't know. 28 carries has got to be. That's got to be the top end. He can't.
Yeah, that was impressive to see, especially at elevation. And he ran. That was one of the highlights I wrote down in my notes. Like he was running hard. Like I think
Yeah,
his hard running is part of the reason why obviously we were still in the game.
yeah.
And so I think having that for Giovanni McCoy is a huge confidence boost for him. And I think he's a team player, but Saladin Allah, from what I could see, he just needs to get a little more comfortable. And once he's there, man, he's gonna be off for the races, in my
Like to see a little more. I'd like to see a little more Jake Reichel too.
opinion. Yeah,
He had the
come on
one
now.
carry for 3 yards and the touchdown last night.
Oh yeah.
Seems like there might be a couple more heavy package situations for him at some point, but
Yeah. Put a big D lineman back there or something. Have a heavy package. Come on now.
yeah. Now yeah, you do love yourself a heavy package.
Oh yeah.
Um, the four picks, two of them really weren't McCoy's fault. The one he threw to Caulfield in the end zone, that's when Caulfield should catch, and he kind of bobbled it, and then it turned into an interception, and then the one at the end of the game, I mean, that's just you're just throwing it up there and hoping somebody comes down with it. So that's, but the
Yeah.
other the pick six. The pick six was a great defensive play. I mean, he still shouldn't have thrown it where he threw it, but it still took a great defensive play to make that happen.
Yeah.
And then the other one was kind of a tip, weird situation. I don't, but
Yeah.
yeah, he had two. So
I think
you don't want to have too many of those games. But
yeah, statistically it's deceive that game is deceiving a bit because you see what Giovanni you see the interception numbers or whatever it may be. But like I was surprised me and the commentators, everyone was surprised to see him kind of sit there and not use his legs as much. People thought maybe something was wrong with him. I don't know, but um, if they could somehow combine these naked boots for him to get these easy dump off passes with the quarterback runs, the speed option. We didn't see
yeah,
any of that. Um, if we could combine these things with the quarterback runs and then getting them comfortable throwing these passes, I think there's something we have brewing here. That was encouraging to see. I was stoked about it.
I think with McCoy, I think they're being a little bit cautious with him as far as running because I don't think he's 100%, and
Mm,
I think he's a little beat up, and
yeah,
uh,
I kind of saw that
so
in in the previous games. I was like, dude, go out of bounds. Stop trying to truck people's slide, please.
yeah, he's not the biggest guy in the world for sure.
Yeah.
Um, now now we talked about both sides. What do you do here these next several games? If there's little hope of stopping the run, what's the plan? Do you take
Um,
chances with blitzes? Do you there was one first half series where Nico Taylor got a 6-yard tackle for loss on first down. Then the Beavers brought the house on third down, and then they forced a long field goal try that Melvin Jordan made a great play on a fake, but you know, when they were successful on the one first down there, they were able to get Nevada off the field. Um, but I don't know if I don't know if they're gonna take some chances on stuff, or if they can actually rely on the guys on the field just to play the defense and
yeah,
make it
no,
happen.
you have to stop the run at all costs. You have to stop the run. It'd be like trying to play chess with just all pawns. You can't do it. Like, there's no way you can expect to win a football game from here on out if you don't stop the run. Seriously, like, there's no way. And so, I think, I what game was it? It was the game before this one. I saw a few packages they were doing. I think it was Colorado State, or maybe it was the game before that one, uh,
Purdue.
where they were running a bear package where they had a zero and then 2-3 techniques, where it was you had three interior defense linemen and two outside linebackers. If that's what you have to do to stop the run, then you got to do that. Obviously, that's hard to do when you're so light on defense line. But I don't care. Put whoever you have at defensive line in there and stop the run. Uh, but I don't know if it's whether you add that package and you make that your base package from here on out, or what it is, but you've got to find a way to stop the run. I don't think the answer is crossing and blitzes and all those kind of things, just because we don't have the experience. And as we've seen, it hurts us more than helps us.
Yeah.
People are getting caught out of their gaps, and that's hurting us a lot. Um, so I think you just play some sound football. You get 5 dudes on the line of scrimmage, 2 to 3 dudes behind them, and you stop the run.
Yeah, the only issue with that though is you got to find 5 dudes you can get on the field.
Find them. I don't know. At one point, I think in 2019 we had Clay Cordasco playing goal line, defensive line at one point. You find
really?
the dude, you put him out there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Oregon State's been pretty much married to having 5 DBs on the field. I haven't really counted every play, but it's pretty much 5 DBs every with a nickel out there on most defensive plays. So yeah, that's potentially. I'm sure they're going to turn over every rock to figure out what they can do because.
Yeah,
I mean, I got the impression they were really embarrassed by that last. Trent was really embarrassed by that last.
It is embarrassing because it's one of those things where it's like, if you get passed on a lot, it's like, okay, that's fine. It's almost like, like it's almost like being a boxer. If you beat me in a basketball game, it's cool. It's like, all right, I can still beat you up in a fight. But if you beat me up in a fight, I'm not going to go up to you and be like, oh, but I could beat you in basketball. It's one of those things where it's like, if you just can't stop the run, it's like, in football, it's almost like someone took your manhood. You know what I mean? It's like, it's the worst feeling. Because someone just imposed their own will upon you and you could do nothing to stop it. So I don't know if they have some offensive lines sitting around who are just maybe itching to get on the field, who they could put at nose tackle or something and put them at a 0 technique and then put Jacob Schuster and Samisi Saluni at the 3 technique. I don't know. You got to find a way to stop the run, though.
They need Jordan Whitley.
Jordan Whitley, man. That is who you need.
That dude was big.
Or Elu Aiden. That's who you need.
Who was it last year? Who's the other guy that was really big? He's not on the team anymore, but he was there early last year.
Tomasio?
Yeah. He was immense.
That's what I'm saying. You just find some big body who can handle a double team, put him in there, 2-3 techniques, and then you could have an outside line, or you have I don't know what the answer is, so to say, but I know the answer is stop the run, because you are not looking at a schedule where you could just have a poor run defense the rest of the schedule. It's just not going to happen.
No, they faced 2 of the top 5 run offenses in the country down the stretch here.
Yep.
I mean, I may be looking in the record book to find out.
Yeah.
Some of these things, if stuff doesn't get fixed. But,
that is priority numero uno for sure.
Which brings us to the Saturday opponent, UNLV. They're 5-1. They're coming off a 50-34 win over Utah State. They are 4th in the country in scoring, 5th in rushing yards. Their quarterback, who's obviously people have known about the situation with their previous quarterback, bailing on them about an NIL deal, and Williams coming in and he's been great. I mean, he's got 48 carries for 325 yards. They don't really throw it a ton, so he doesn't have much in way of passing stats. But I mean, their team is averaging 5.84 yards per carry. Oregon State is, I hate to bring this up, but Oregon State is last in the country in yards per carry, 6.45.
Oh, for defense? For defensive?
Yes, last. Wow. Number 134.
You're saying in yards allowed?
On paper, it's just a mismatch. I mean, so, so my thinking is Oregon State, the only way they can win this game is, you got to get a couple of cheapy scores on it, get a couple of takeaways that lead to a couple of easy scores. Maybe you make a couple of special teams plays, which haven't really happened much. Then finish those promising drives. That last night, as bad as it got, if they just finished a couple of those drives that, they got down there and didn't finish them, I mean, maybe it's a different game.
Right.
The interception in the end zone, things like that, coming up short and having to kick a field goal on 4th and goal at the 2 or 3 or whatever it was. You finish a couple of those drives and,
Yeah.
No,
I mean, that's
but I don't know.
that was the cardinal sin, obviously, is turning over the ball in the red zone. If you don't do that, if maybe you take 3 points there instead of having that complete change, like that was what, a 14-point swing basically, because you missed out on points and then they got points. So if this game could have, I don't want us to blow it out of proportion because the game could have gone a completely different way. I think priority number one, like this is DEFCON 0, like you stop the run. If you could stop the run this game, I think you have a chance.
Yeah.
Because I like what we see from our offense. You just got to stop the run. Obviously, you can't have it both ways, right? You can't stop the run and then also be perfect in pass defense, right? You're going to give a little bit in some areas, but I think if we could get some guys healthy this next week and back in rotation, we could have a shot here.
One thing I was going to ask, I forgot about the game last night, a strategy situation. Okay, so there's 7 seconds left. Oregon State's got the ball. I want to say about the 33. I think it was about the 33. The play was to throw it in the end zone, the last play of the game. I was thinking, why not go for one of those quick sideline 10 to 12 yard, get it in 5 seconds. I mean, they were great doing that against Colorado State. And get it to where you still have maybe a second or two left on the clock, get out of bounds. Yeah. So now you're looking at maybe 21 yards where you don't have to loft one up there you could drive a ball into somebody running a pattern or something. I don't know. I don't know what's going through your mind when you're watching the final.
Yeah. I agree with you. I don't really see, because they were already, Nevada went into a prevent defense where they had like 3 dudes on the goal line.
Yeah.
There was, I think, between our receiver and the next defender was like 10 yards at least. So if you could get a quick out and you're confident you could do it accurately and your guy could get out of bounds, that's most important, obviously. It's just
but you don't get out of bounds.
7 seconds is tight, though. It's really tight.
It is, but I mean, you don't have a lot of options in that situation. I just feel like those Hail Mary plays are.
Yeah.
I mean, shoot, Trayshawn Harrison happens once a career.
Yeah. That was awesome.
I kept thinking about that play on that last drive.
Awesome, man.
Yeah,
I'll never forget that one.
That's one you're not going to ever forget. The other thing is too, they're coming home where Oregon State's 18-3 in research, so that's not a situation that could be discounted. I mean, the team does play better at home. I mean, the 3 losses are to 3 really good teams: SC, Washington, and Oregon. I think all top 10 teams when they came to research. So
yeah, we do have.
UNLV has got some advantages, obviously, but they're going to have their hands full with Oregon State's offense, I think.
Yeah. No, our offense was hitting on all cylinders, in my opinion. Obviously, you had those few mistakes, but it just looked like guys were out there confident. Like Jermaine Terry was out there confident. Hank was out there confident. Giovanni McCoy was out there confident. Even when that interception happened, I saw him on the TV. He was still smiling. He still had his whereabouts about him. He wasn't down in the dumps. So like it seems like his offense is very confident. The problem is when we get into this sort of scenario where your offense is doing really well and your defense is struggling, there begins to be a lot of finger pointing. And it's your fault. No, it's his fault. No, it's you. Come on, defense. What are you guys doing? At all costs, you have to stop that. As a coach and as a captain on the team, there can be no finger pointing. We win as a team. We lose as a team. And so I'm confident that Joshua Gray will be a guy who can handle that and make sure that doesn't happen. But definitely be aware of that.
Did that ever even hint of happening during your career at all?
Oh yeah, 2018. It was like, like come on, like at halftime, people would be yelling at each other on the field, on the sideline. Offense would be like, "Come on, defense, pick it up. What are you guys doing?" Um, lots of I mean, in the off season, people were arguing like, "You guys suck. Come on." There's a lot of chirping back and forth, not a lot of leadership. So I have seen it, and it's ugly, and it's not good.
Yeah.
And you cannot win with it. Obviously, I'm living proof you cannot win with a divided team. Was it a divided house cannot stand? So
Yeah.
you got to be unified.
Yeah. So I asked listeners, readers, / whatever, they had any questions, and they had a few. One was actually there's several of them that had the same comment. They want to know, do you have any eligibility remaining? I know the answer to
Me
that,
and my
but
dad were just talking about that. He was like, "Man, maybe you should have taken a redshirt year or something and try to get back out there." But I don't. No, I don't think so. Other than like a medical, like a what's it called, a medical
medical red shirt.
hardship year. No,
Yeah.
I was done about 6 years. I was like, okay, I think I'm done.
Yeah, there's not much market for a 225-pound defensive lineman
Yeah,
anyway.
right. I know. If I go out there, I'll get crushed.
You're not even big enough to play tight end anymore, are you?
Yeah, I'm not big enough to play linebacker, tight end, none of that. I'd
Yeah.
have to go on a crazy seafood diet. Seafood, eat food.
You're right where you want to be, watching the game, not playing
Yep.
it.
Crack
Maybe
open a
still like
non-alcoholic beer right where I want to be, right there.
maybe you'd like to still play. I don't know, but probably. So, one question here, it says, you know, when you played for Bray, he was promoted defensive coordinator. Do you think Bray would would step in and start taking over the defensive calls, and how do you think that the team would receive something like that?
Oh, that's a tough question. That thought has crossed my mind. I don't think I honestly don't think that it's a scenario where Coach Bray would have to step in because it's not necessarily a scheme problem.
Yeah,
That's not the problem here. The problem is guys are not doing their job and they're not where they're supposed to be on the field. So if anything, there just needs to be more focus in these areas of like, hey, if we're gonna run this defense, you gotta be in your gap. Do not be out of your gap. And this is the technique you use to do it, and you drill it and you drill it and you drill it and you drill it. We ran similar defenses from 2018, and the difference is that people were then doing their jobs.
yeah,
And so you just gotta. I don't think it's necessarily Coach Bray takes over the play call, and that's going to change much of anything, to be honest.
yeah. Uh, this next one's always one of my favorites because fans sometimes love to think that they can they can recognize talent, I guess. And this guy says, our defense has limited talent, and this must be recognized by our coaches. And I guess he just doesn't believe there's enough talent out there. I don't know. I mean,
Hmm.
it's hard to say. I mean, when half the guys are not dressed down, it's hard to say what's out, what you got.
Right.
I mean, let's just go back to last year. I mean, you guys always felt like you had enough talent out there, didn't you? I mean, did you? I
Yeah.
mean,
I
did you?
mean, I'll be honest. It's never really in the game of football. It is the greatest sport because it's the greatest team sport, especially on defense. If there's one person who's out of there, there's one weakness in the chain. That's it's gonna fall apart. I'll challenge that person who asked that question. Go to 2018, watch the game film, and look at the people we had on the field. We had Elu Aiden, who's one of the best defensive linemen I've seen. Kalani Vakamaleo. Coach Lange says one of the best defensive linemen he's coached. We had Hamika Rashid out there, NFL caliber player. We had multiple defensive backs who I think, yeah,
Yeah, you
2018 who played.
Isaiah
Isaiah
Dunn.
Dunn. He's currently in the NFL. I'm not sure where he's landed, but he's bouncing around place to place.
Yeah,
We had so much talent on that I'll be honest, 2018 was probably one of our most talented teams I've played on.
Yeah.
Like across the board, running back, quarterback, wide receiver, offensive line, defensive line, defensive backs, and we were that was the worst team I played on in my whole tenure at Oregon State. And so I don't think it's a question of talent. It's just people aren't doing their job.
Yeah.
And they're not experienced. It's the youngest. This is the youngest Oregon State team I've seen. You know, how many returning starters were there on the front seven? Zero.
Yeah, there were none. There were none, and that's one thing that just gets lost all the time is that people forget that Joe Golden, James
Rawls,
Rawls,
Drew
all
Chatfield.
You guys were all seniors, all had played 5 or 6 years.
Yep.
You know, it was, yeah, I mean,
Sione Lolohea.
Yeah, it's just you can't. This team just doesn't have the experience, but it also, you know, it's also hurt by the injuries. But even if they're on the field, the experience would still be a challenge. So
yeah, and like for example, like there was just so many players on the field that I just watched where it just looked like everything was super fast for them. And that's what happens with lack of experience is everything looks super fast. Like imagine you go into a job, right? And you're there your first day. Everything looks like it's moving so fast. But when you've been there for a while, things start to slow down. You understand processes of okay, that's the way it looks, you know. It gets to a point where you're able to slow the game down a bit, and they're just not at that level yet where they gotta get there though. You gotta get to that level.
Okay, well, I think that's probably going to do it for this week. We've chopped up a loss pretty good, so we'll see what happens next week. But yeah, that's going to do it for the podcast for this week. We'll be back next week to see how Oregon State's repaired its defense, discuss what happens with UNLV, and then probably take a quick look at a familiar opponent from years past in California. That's coming up the last game of October. So we'll see you next week.
See ya. Go Beavs.